I remember when I first played FF8 at a wee age of 12 years old, and I was curious to the max about the characters of FF8, about sorceresses, or simply witches as they're referred to in the original Japanese, but one figure, one person that flew right under my radar was Selphie. I mean, she's just a clumsy, wacky, seemingly ditzy mare with a catchphrase of Booyaka! And I can see why I missed it. I mean, what significant depth or substance could there really be to this semi-comedic relief character who went on to inspire the creation of Riku? Well, my fellow pezzers, after digging through a bazillion sources I can't list here, so I'm just going to thank the general whole FF community for this theory, and some of the speculations are my own, I'd like to present to you the notion and the evidence for why Selphie Tilmitt could be a sorceress. Get your tinnies and tinfoil hat up as I caterwaul my way through this rather crazy to consider theory. So starting quickly with what a sorceress is. In the world of FF8, a sorceress is basically a female who has powers passed down to her from another sorceress before their death. The game implies that this is not optional. Maybe it's a delayed immortality until they find a new host. I think that's even implied. As in, they literally cannot die until they pass on their powers, making something like suicide not a solution if you do become one. As for where these powers originally came from, there was once a god called Hein. Oh shit, you best believe we are going into the backstory. And Hein, he created mankind to do his bidding as tools. Now, he gave these tools the capability to multiply and increase in efficiency. He then went very long nap, and upon awakening found out that his tools had grown into the millions and they were rather demanding. Deciding there were too many of them, he culled some of the smaller tools that they called children, but the bigger ones didn't seem to like this, as they seemed to be fond of these so-called children. Confused and confronted with an angry mob of his own creation, looking to kill him, he pulled a sly maneuver, did Hein, and offered them half of his body and his power. Now, being as he is a god, and with a lust for power, the tools / mankind accepted the offer. And I've got to say, I love this story, mostly just because of how much I can relate to Hein's point of view. I mean, can you imagine building a new shed, taking a new nap, and when you came back, your gardening shears have united and orchestrated an angry uprising against you? You'd be pissed. So Hein, he gives them half of his body as promised. The bamboozling catch, however, is the cheeky feck. He left them with just his skin, which was the half that had no magical powers, and then disappeared, leaving a vengeful mankind hunting his ass for centuries to come to no avail. Hein is the biggest dick god ever. It's also, on a separate side note, a likely cool throwback to FF3's Hein. Now, Hein and Hein are actually spelt the same way in Japan, and I mean, he's also a skeleton with no skin. He can make giant things float. He's a sorcerer with an array of dark magic that we also see in the sorceresses in FF8 world, and one of this magical skelly's trickster favourite moves in the game are psychological ones, such as sleep or confuse, which is something Sorceress AD is quite fond of using, like the fascination technique she uses on an entire crowd during the Dealing City Parade. Jeez, Pez, we're already a few minutes into this vid, and you've barely even mentioned Selphie. I came to fangirl over impossible hair, poorly wielded nunchucks girl. Hold with me, guys. I'm setting the stage, as it were, because from that backstory of Hein came the origins of the sorceresses. Now, rumour has it that Hein didn't make off with his real magical half. That it wouldn't be the one from FF3, because the half that was magical, supposedly according to rumours, was placed into females, a gentler race who it was thought should be protected, and it is for that reason that in the world of FF8 it is only females who are sorceresses, and any female can have the potential for natural magic or to be a sorceress. Almost. And there's actually two really big distinctions with magic. So magic in FF8, it can come from a variety of manufactured means. Junction in the guarding force, that's one. Dr. Odine's paramagic, which is basically the process of drawing magic from, say, monsters who presumably have magic because they all came from the lunatic Pandora once upon a time. I mean, even Galbadia, they craft a very own, quite crude base method of their own for using magic, but that's all manufactured. In terms of natural magic, that only belongs to women in this game, but only a few can manifest their powers. Alone, for example, she can send consciousness back into time, which is a pretty gnarly skill, right? But most Westerners would be surprised to find out that Alone is not actually a sorceress. That's right, I was very shocked myself. Alone is stated to be a sorceress in our version. They also state it in Dissidia, but it does say on the Wikipedia that this is a translation error. Does kind of make sense because after all, Adele vetted every young girl in the nation during her reign of terror just to pick a girl, a female, and she chose Alone to be her successor, but Laguna's devious little trick prevents it, so she never actually inherits any sorceress's power, which goes hand in hand with the point that only one sorceress can exist at any given time. Bar any time compression voodoo. P.S. I don't envy you. If you're waking up at 6 in the morning to see this with like, ooh, Pez has got a new video, I mean, I'm just getting bamboozled recording this. So pressing on, even the way the sorceresses get their title has a load of different complexities to it, how they even become. Most of it is via the basic transferal, if they're magically gifted or they're a suitable candidate, but supposedly there are other ways, one of which is known as a Berserk transformation or Berserk State. Now these awakenings are unique to only Adele and Ultimecia, which are triggered by some kind of severe life tragedy. A great explanation as to why they might be so evil. I mean, hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn and all that. So now we come to our dear little Selphie. Bubbly, energetic, and outgoing, but in researching this video, I found her exuberance is hidden among a lot of other stuff. Under a very strong intuition, determination, and a surprising pinch of humour that can be quite dark at times. While she might seem like a side character who pales in terms of on-screen time against Rinoa and, say, Squall, for example, but off-screen, this character actually has one of the most fleshed-out characterizations of possibly the entire cast. Her diaries are a huge part of that. I mean, these can be collected and accessed throughout the game, giving those dedicated enough to pursue a great depth of insight into her thoughts and personality, from a great deal of questioning of who and what sorceresses are, somehow sensing that she would soon meet another good sorceress. Before Rinoa got her powers, this was a very weird entry, almost like a prediction, and also emphasising repeatedly how important and close her relationship with Adia was. And my perception of this character from going through this diary, yeah, believe it or not, that's my Wednesday, people. I was myself fooled into thinking she was just a lovable, dumb klutz of a character, but the truth is Selphie knowingly and intentionally, very much I'm convinced of it, puts those traits on display. She wears a mask, one of her own design, that regularly fights back any deeper feelings. She rejects any feelings that aren't that of happiness, and if she feels that composure slip, she's mentioned a few times that she fears what people will discover, like in this diary entry where she actually calls it her weak side, and she's going to stop writing so people don't see it. Now this seems strange for such a seemingly open and confident girl who even publishes her diary entries publicly. Or is it? Because at one point in the game, we go to Trabia Garden, a move that Selphie orchestrated, that was her school, and Squall tries to access one of her entries, but she destroys the data before it can be read. And the mystery of what Selphie was hiding on those diary entries, which must have been her earliest ones. Again, she lived and grew up in Trabia, she was the only one separated from the others. And the mystery of what she was hiding still remains. And you know what, I'm just gonna come out and say it, screw it. I am theorizing, ladies and gentle peasants, the possibility that Selphie knows. She knows that she is magically gifted, and like any girl in this world knows, that makes her susceptible to being used by greater political powers, or even a sorceress, a fate that she does not want, and has spent her whole life building up this really thoroughly fleshed out guise of innocence and naivety to stop her secret ever getting out. I know this is full tinfoil hat content here, people, and I think it's a cheerfulness born out of desperation, out of a fear of allowing her true nature to be seen. Pretty far-fetched conclusion, right? Well, let us press on. Now, I'm not saying that none of her personality is genuine. I definitely think it is, but look at the roster of amazing feats that Selphie has under her belt that seem to contradict her happy-go-lucky, two-dimensional, and not very bright exterior. She kind of plays it up. Not only does she pass top of her class for Seed via Squad A, which is the intelligence team, Squall and Cypher, Inquisitors and whatnot was Squad B. So she's in the intelligence team, people. And that really shows, because she's not only is she the first person and the main person throughout the game to pilot the Ragnarok, completely with no training or knowledge of how to, she just does it. The missile base plans, they were her taking cover in the machine that saves their life. Hers again. She constantly enters logs, analysing her teammates in such a such a far gone way, like school for example. She speaks about it many times and she's very accurate in doing so. So the amount of analysing and inspection of her comrades around her that she does is pretty deep, indicating to me that she has a profound empathic-like intuition. And that gets supported by the way she's the first and most drawn to Laguna. She even starts writing about him. The only thing that seems more uncanny than Selphie's gut instinct about people is the way she runs into all her situations seemingly on fate alone. No, she bumps into Squall purely by chance in the corridors, and then again in Dollar as she was running a message, not knowing where they were. She was running blind trying to find them. Now the only reason I make that point is because it's quite a bit different to the way that Squall meets the others. Quistis is his established teacher. Zell and Irvine both get assigned manually to the team. And as for Rinoa, Sid Kramer messaged her and she harangued him during a ball scene because she knew he was Seed, and probably because Cypher didn't call her back the next morning. Ooh, gross. But Selphie, she seems more pulled into this story by fate, by chance, by luck, or a mix between. But that strong instinct, that tactician skills, that brilliant disguised genius isn't enough to claim her sorceress material just yet. So let us move now onto her powers. I just kind of wanted to open your eyes that Selphie is a bit of a deeper character than I thought. But let's move on to her actual powers. So Selphie's limit breaks are by far the most interesting and powerful in the game. These are the spells Full Cure, Wall, but most notably Rapture, which places bright white wings on the enemy's back and flies them off. Bright white rings, people. Bear it in mind. But also, and this is the doozy, the End, which looks something like this. Oh my, now anyone who has played FF8, they can see just how extremely iconic those two moves are. I mean, the End, literally creating the flower and fields we see Rinoa in at both the opening and end of the game. The place where she meets Squall to escape the time compression, Selphie can literally manifest it. And this move is so strong, it's the only one that can instantly give any boss in the game, and that's including Ultimecia, in one foul hit. Patricia! Oh, pretty mad, right? And it is when you also consider that, as I said, magic can only be used in this game via GF junction or draw, so it can't be used naturally. But Selphie is the only one who can use her magic limit breaks with nothing junctioned. And no, that's not an oversight from Square. I thought about that. I mean, maybe it could be, but I don't think it is, because when you take Rinoa, for example, she can't cast her Angel Wing limit break if she's unjunctioned. And the only time she can do it is after she becomes a sorceress in the game. They literally tie it canonically into the story, that function. It actually changed the mechanic and the limit break capability of Rinoa. Definitely no mistake. But Selphie, she appears to be able to do it without any. Now, some would explain this away by the detail, and I'll confess this could be some counter material that we do later discover that Selphie junctioned a GF to herself at the age of 12 while she was on a mission. The monster she killed had one inside, which begs the question how she was dope enough to kill one at 12, but of course, like all Guardian forces, when they're equipped, you forget, and because she had it equipped so long, that's why her memory is even worse. But she did quit one at a young age of 12. But if that was the case, that is the reason why she can do magic limit breaks without any junctioning, then it would be the same for everyone else. It'd be the same for Rinoa, but it clearly isn't. Hoo-yah! Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Quistis? She uses limit break magic, so could she be a sorceress candidate as well? To which I'm gonna say no, because hers is a blue magic and it's based around items to cast a limit break, and they have that whole thing set up for Quistis, which is in and of itself kind of proof that Square did place an emphasis of justifying how these characters use their magic. They implemented these mechanically, so why does Selphie get away with it? And with spells more powerful than any sorceress in the game to boot. So one explanation could be that they are just lingering abilities that Square lazily forgot to take out or change out after what looks like Rinoa was turned into Selphie. Now, I don't think it was quite like that. I don't think Rinoa was turned into Selphie, but this 1998 trailer, if you look closely, it shows Rinoa on the doll at Beach Siege. Completely crazy, right? Considering that Rinoa isn't even a seed or anywhere near this scene in the game. I mean, here you can clearly see Rinoa at the submarine, and crazier still, even in the game today, This was real crazy, guys. If you look at Selphie's shadow, follow it really, really closely, you'll notice it's actually still Rinoa's shadow in the game. I know this originated from the demo, the FF8 demo that came out in the game, but Selphie being swapped with Rinoa in these scenes, some have questioned whether there's been some passing between content or spells between Selphie and Rinoa, and maybe that's why Selphie has limit breaks that look like they should clearly belong to Rinoa. I don't think so, and the reason I say that is because Selphie is not an afterthought of Rinoa. Check this! She was the second character after Squall that Tetsuya Nomura drew for the game, in which he states he intentionally gave her an impractical crazy hairstyle, but there's no way that Selphie is just an afterthought character. It also doesn't seem a mistake because if you data mine into the game, it was discovered that Selphie had been given 2 other limit breaks that were, again, astronomical in power compared to the norms, and those 2 spells are Peasant, which is a gravity type spell that cuts all enemies' life 93.75%. 15 out of 16 reduction ratio. The second is Catastrophe, which is pretty much the ultimate most powerful offensive spell in this game. It is 2.25 times more powerful than Ultima and 1.5 times more powerful than Ultimecia's Apocalypse. It also appears to be no coincidence that Selphie is very drawn towards sorceresses and that she has abilities that seem to replicate very powerful spells that would seem more suited Rinoa because of this diary entry here. Now, I know it says Maria, but trust me, that's just what the dude called his Rinoa in the game. Selphie says that she sees a lot of herself in Rinoa. Although they just march to a different tune, a different beat, she sees a lot of herself in Rinoa. Now, that is a very strange comparison to make. Rinoa and Selphie, at first glance, they could not seem any different in personality. About the only thing they do share is a deep fascination with Squall, borderline on obsession, hence why there's all the Selphie Squall shippers out there, but none of it is too beyond comprehension because there is a reason why Selphie is and was chosen by Sid to be a core seed member. In fact, is it not secretly one of the main reasons Balam Garden was made, if you think about it, guys? Was it not to give a safe place to nurture young men and women in a safe environment under the protection of a sorceress and sorceress knight? Find other young women with the potential for magic to meet and bond with the young men who feel the draw to being a knight. I don't think it's too hard to believe, the idea of fate or destiny in this game, considering that all of these characters lived in an orphanage together back in the day as children, and now they're running into each other. And this is where I'm now going to summon my final triple triad trump card on this theory that Selphie is a sorceress candidate in disguise. The orphanage. When Squall and Ultimecia travel back in the biggest granny panty of plot twists, that Squall was the one who gave Edea the idea to even make Seed. He gave her the idea, the place where Edea also takes on a dying Ultimecia's power. Now, Edea, she was already a sorceress at this point after becoming the successor of a supposedly unknown sorceress at the age of 5. This dude being her sorceress knight, literally this dude, the dude wearing an old weird uncle's cardie. And the question is, why would a dying Ultimecia come to this place to find a successor? Why? Now, the obvious answer would clearly be to pass him on to Edea, this time era's current sorceress, but things get a little shaken up with just one little line. I shall take over that sorceress's power. I do not want one of the children to become one. Ooh, now, this might be an utterly frivolous throwaway line, void of meaning, but I think at the very least, the point of her mentioning the children, it should be recognised. Also, even just look at the term take over. At face value, takeover implies that Edea will take the power herself. It's not going to be given to her, as the obvious intention of Ultimecia being here in the first place would seem. I mean, I'd definitely love to see what the original Japanese version said here. If anyone knows, please let us know in the comment section, as history has shown that could wildly change the meaning of what was said. But let's go on the English version. The children. There are only 2 at the orphanage, as Alone is not here at this point. So there are only 2 potential people who could have become sorceresses, and that is Quistis and Selphie. Now, which one is Edea really fearing for here? Because surely as a sorceress herself, she would know and sense which one had the capacity to be one. And just to quickly note, there does seem to be a capacity. So I've heard some people say any woman can become a sorceress. But I don't know if that's exactly true. Maybe if in a super desperate situation, okay, there was no one else to take the power. But it does mention about a capacity in the game. The law, it states, sorceress's power have been passed down throughout history by the process of embodiment. Any person who has the capacity to embody the great sorceress power is a candidate. And even if we just go to Adele, look at the amount of vetting of young girls. She had all of the ones who showed the signs, the greatest signs of potentially being magically gifted. So there must be some sort of standard. Now again, I could be just clutching at terminology straws here, but Adia being fearful, is it because she knows one of those two girls in her care is a candidate? And if so, would it more likely be the sexy librarian incarnate who uses material items and the study of nature and animals and machines to replicate what's known as blue magic, a magic with a not so magical explanation to it? Or would it be the deceptively minded empath who strolls fatefully into the story armed with a shit ton of very questionable designed limit breaks that don't require drawn magic or junctioning in a game that is deadly specific about drawn magic and junctioning, who states she had a very special kind of relationship with Adia, the sorceress of the time, that she sees herself a lot in Rinoa, is drawn in fact to pretty much every main character in the game, and she has a lot of other suspicious, intriguing moments that stand out if you just take the time to look closely enough. Which would it be? Makes me really think that the significance of the game's most iconic Fisherman's Horizon, an event that they actually organised to cheer up Selphie after her garden trabia was ground zeroed, was stopping a potential sorceress candidate from going berserker transformation and clubbing the world with mystical nunchucks. Though I'm going to say the real credit in this scenario, if this wacky, wild scenario is true, in which I will admit there's probably a 0 to nats chance that Squaresoft actually went this deep, but it's fun to consider anyway. We should credit Selphie, because clearly her state of almost childlike enthusiasm and joy is something she puts a great deal of conscious effort and awareness into maintaining, no matter how dark things get. I think it's one of the most commendable self-disciplines a person can practice, and I found a great respect for this in-your-face, borderline Genki trope. But if you're not convinced yet, there's one final discovery I made, which again, this could be just a series of huge coincidences that are just building a grander, more meaningful and enjoyable picture than is canonically real or intended by Square. But this is kind of what I love about theories. Sometimes the bullshit ramblings and speculations can sometimes build just a prettier picture. And the thing I've discovered is that Quistis and Selphie, they were the two main females who grew up with the Sorceress Adia, right? Or matron, as they called them. And if either of these two girls could sense it, lingering trapped within her to awaken, it would have been Ultimecia too. Now, while searching all of this and the original version that swapped Rinoa for Selphie, it was in the trailer, like I mentioned, and you'll notice Leviathan in this trailer, a guardian force that you cannot get until very later on from only two very specific bosses. Just thinking about the GF that Selphie summoned when she was 12. Could her forgotten GF have been Leviathan? Because when you look at the compatibility, you will see the three characters most compatible with Leviathan are all sorceressy related. Number one, Adia, the one Ultimecia first possessed. The second is Rinoa, who was also the second person that Ultimecia possessed. And then the third person is Selphie, the child that I'm now theorising Ultimecia would have chosen to possess if it weren't for Adia. And this is great significance, because the only two places where you get Levi are from Norg, the head garden faculty and kind of financer of Balam Garden. He kind of betrayed Sid Kramer and tried to hand over Squall and the gang to Ultimecia to save his globulous hide. The second place is from a boss called Trauma, who, as you guessed, is once again a minion of Ultimecia, one that she actually crafted from the future. So Levi and Ultimecia seem to be besties. It could just be a coincidence and nothing associated or any kind of hint that that was Selphie's GF when she was 12. Maybe Rinoa being in the place in that trailer was more than just a Squaresoft fishing for fan feedback to the main female protagonist's appearance. Maybe Selphie was going to summon Leviathan during the Dollet scene. Quistis, fun enough, was also missing from the demo, and one of the most expensive Final Fantasy figurines. I mean, literally £1,800 kinds of expensive. Only a small limited edition amount of them went into production before the beginning of the game, and that's the statue of Leviathan with Selphie and Quistis, where you'll also notice that Selphie is oddly called Selphine for some reason. So there we go, maybe, who knows, but this is all just part of my grand theory. Maybe I'm just throwing shit at a wall and hoping that it sticks. After all, there's no end to the amount of coincidences that you can dig up and slap together. I mean, for example, I could even say, for example, the trauma fight in Ultimecia. The way you solve that is you have to go through these paintings to match them to the corresponding hands on the clock to proceed in, again, Ultimecia's castle. So to get Leviathan, we have to answer them all correct, and the 3 for FF8 or Vividarium, Intervigilium, and VIII, which translates in Greek as "in the garden sleeps a messenger." So who knows? The garden could be Selphie's the end limit break. She can manifest the garden. Sleeps, well, any young magically gifted girl hiding as a sorceress candidate, hiding from any kind of awakening, hidden sleeping potential, and a messenger. Well, that's exactly what Selphie is. She didn't want points deducted from her test, so she ran, and then finding them delivers her message, which is the withdrawal order that narrowly saves School Cypher and Zell's life at the very start of the game, and begins our journey by a hair margin. Crazy good luck and instinct. But there it is, guys. I am done. I'm out. What do you think? I mean, I guess it's not too far-fetched out there. There's going to be hundreds, maybe even thousands of girls in the world of FF8 who could fit the bill as a sorceress candidate. So screw it. I'm just going to headcanon that the data she blocked from being seen, mysteriously corrupted one on the monitor, was an era of her diary entries where she expressed some pretty shady shiz. But there we go. I'm done. A shameless excuse to dive into some juicy Final Fantasy VIII lore. That's all that really was. I think you can tell. Thank you so much for staying with this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below, and I'm off to Japan. Oh god, I'm off to Japan this Tuesday at the point I'm recording this. Oh, it's 3 days away. Shit, I need to go pack. Until the next video, come on!